Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm getting close to getting out of this thing, fortunately. But I'm making this video very quickly. I had basically a message from a person named Albert, and then I lost the message. But basically, he was asking me a few questions. He said that he thinks that it's illogical to think that God did not have a cause, and that if God created us, then who created him, basically. And I wanted to kind of respond to that. And I'm going to keep this brief because while I used to make a lot of apologetic videos years ago, people who've been following me for years know this, I don't really do it so much anymore. I think it's more important to really focus in on trying to reach those people who are open to the gospel, or who are at least willing to consider it. And a lot of times I find the people who are in these types of arguments about supposedly science versus the Bible are not really open. They're simply looking for excuses. And they want to use science as their hinge pin to do that. But I will answer the question. God is the uncaused cause of all things. He never had a beginning and he never had an end. He is outside of the universe. He's outside of the physical universe. But anything that is physical had a cause. And we know that the universe, as well as the earth, are not eternal. We know this based on the second law of thermodynamics, which states that over time there is less and less energy for further use, available for further use. In other words, eventually all energy will come to equilibrium, where it no longer can be used for any future work. And if the universe were eternal, and the earth were eternal, it would have already reached equilibrium somewhere in eternity past, and we wouldn't exist here. Scientists know this, but in addition to that, the argument that, it's illogical that God has always been and always will be, that he never had a beginning and never had an end, that's illogical somehow. Well, you want to try to use science to say that's illogical, but science actually has the same conundrum, but it's even worse for them. Because energy is in the physical universe, and energy is going to equilibrium, which means one day it's going to come to a sudden stop to where it can no longer be used for any future work. Unlike God, who is outside of the physical universe, energy is inside of the physical universe. And why is energy a dilemma for science? Because scientists teach that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be converted from one form of energy into another form of energy. In other words, you can change it from one form to another. However, it's always been and always shall be. I've never had a nitpick, because they say it might neither be created nor destroyed. Well, if it can't be created, then that means it must have always been there, right? And it cannot be destroyed, which means it would never have an ending either. So they are actually, without maybe even realizing it, under the same problem, except for it's worse, because energy is a physically measurable thing. It is physical, and therefore we know it had to have had a beginning. And we also know, because of the second law of thermodynamics, it's slowly moving to equilibrium, that it will have an end of any usefulness anyway. And therefore, energy is not the uncaused cause of everything we see. But God is the uncaused cause, who is outside of the universe, the physical universe, so he's not subject to physical laws. But energy is. The first law of thermodynamics is the law of preservation. And people say, well, the reason the earth keeps on going and going is because we are in an open system. where the energy comes in from the sun and whatnot. But that doesn't answer anything of how life got to be here either, because you see, it's not enough just to have the earth bombarded with energy, even if it's active energy that can be utilized, because you have to have some kind of a mechanism in order to capture that energy to put it to use. Perfectly good example are the plants when they create their photosynthesis. The photosynthesis process is a very complex process that had to already be in place in order to capture that energy, in order to utilize that energy. And if there was no mechanisms already in place to capture that energy, well, life would never have begun. So going back to how life got to be here, abiogenesis just doesn't work. You don't get life from non-life. Everywhere we have ever looked, we have always gotten life from life, never life from non-life. Life just doesn't arise de novo out of nothing. And that's, again, where God comes in. God created life. God created everything that you see. He is outside of the universe. Therefore, he is not physical in the way that we understand physics. He is not subject to the law of the second law of thermodynamics, where things are unwinding. He never had a beginning, and he never will have an end. But the physical universe had a beginning, and it will have an end. So that's just to kind of answer your question. You need to really ponder these things, because if you say that it's illogical for God to always have existed without having a cause, and that he will never end, but yet you'll turn around in your science and say that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it can be only converted from one form into another, you are basically under the same conundrum, but it's worse, because energy is in the physical universe, therefore it is subject to physical law, and it will reach equilibrium based upon the second law of thermodynamics eventually. And no longer be available for any future work, unlike God, who is outside of the physical universe, and he is not subject to those laws. So thanks, Albert, for your message. I hope you'll ponder these things and consider it deeply.